And welcome back to BLOCKTV, where it is time for a fireside chat on this December day on the verge of a new decade. It is no secret that Bitcoin has had a rough few weeks, to say the least. No Santa rally, and in the past several weeks, a downward trend that has many in the sphere worried, but not Tim Draper. Despite the macro backdrop of Bitcoin falling by 50% over the past 6 months, the American entrepreneur and billionaire has doubled down recently on his long-lasting, standing prediction that Bitcoin will hit $250,000 by 2022 or 2023, I believe, claiming that Bitcoin, or 2033, pardon me, that Bitcoin is right on track. I'm quoting you, Mr. Draper. Luckily for me, on this holiday season, Mr. Draper himself joins us now from Silicon Valley, the thick of things, as he says, to give us all some hope and take a look at the year that was. Mr. Draper, thank you so much for being with us today.
Great. Thanks for having me on your show.
Always a pleasure. Back to Bitcoin and your claim. You say it's right on track. Please, how can you quantify that statement? As we're recording this, it's not looking so good.
Oh, no. You're going to see all sorts of fluctuations as people sell to buy Christmas presents, and then they buy to speculate or whatever. But what I'm expecting is that within the next 2 years, people are going to have this choice. They're going to say, do I want to use a credit card that costs me 2.5% to 4% every time I swipe it, or do I want to use Bitcoin, which is frictionless? I mean, it makes me angrier and angrier that the banks are taking 2.5% to 4% every single time I swipe my credit card. It just goes away. I mean, I think of that 2.5% to 4%, I could do a lot with that. And I think a lot of other people in the world are going to feel that way too. And it's just a matter of when it's a little bit more convenient and people feel a little more secure about it, where they can swipe that credit card. And that just means a few more engineers have to do a lot more work. And once that happens, it should be there. And actually, it's interesting, the technical analysis of Bitcoin comes out about exactly the same way. That if you run a technical analysis, it looks like it'll be something like 6 months to a year after the halving that we will cross we will cross 250,000 per Bitcoin. So it might be an interesting buying opportunity, and it also the technical analysis evaluates Bitcoin, and they say it should be in the sort of 7,500 range during this period, based on various technical analyses. I don't quite understand all that, but that's what they're saying. I'm just saying that it's pretty likely that we're going to hit 250,000 by end of 2022 or early 2023, based on customer adoption of Bitcoin. And I think it's spreading. I think a lot of people are giving Bitcoin out for the holidays as Christmas presents or Hanukkah presents or whatever. So I think that's going to be kind of fun to see that more wallets are created. It's really an exciting time. I can't wait, because I'm so frustrated with the banks just taking 2.5% to 4% every time I swipe my credit card. I'm ready for this new currency that's frictionless and open.
Mr. Draper, you trust me, you and I both, I am ever so frustrated by that 2 to 4%. You have no idea how, but I'm the layperson, so to speak. Why aren't people seeing the light yet? Let's say, after the halving, those technical analysis charts are claiming that, we're reaching that point. Are people ready to mass adopt this? Because the big question is, why hasn't that happened thus far? That 2 and 4% is being taken constantly out of our credit cards.
Yeah, it keeps going. I actually think that the floodgates are about to open, because it turns out that women do about 75 to 80% of the retail business. I mean, they do 75 to 80% of the shopping, and
Indeed.
women are only one out of every 15 wallets is Bitcoin wallets is held by a woman. So I think that there's this, and once the women realize that they're wasting 2.5% to 4% every time they swipe their credit card, they will definitely be starting to look for a better solution, knowing that there is another solution. So I think you're unique in that you have a Bitcoin wallet amongst women. There are, but I think once that happens, the floodgates will open up, and I think we're going to see.
Mr. Draper, I agree with you entirely, but for that, the patriarchy has to die first. I'm kidding. That said.
Well, the patriarchy isn't spending that money.
Exactly. Exactly. But then we have to be included.
That's the matriarchy, baby.
That's the matriarchy. That's right. Once again, I think
75 to 80% of retail spending.
Amen. If you put us in charge, we'll have more wallets. I fully agree. I think we need to get women into the game, as in everything else. Back to you, though, because we're speaking on the cuff of, as you said, you had a prediction. And, as the year is ending, you also said something very interesting. There's a man in jail for quite a while. His name is Ross Ulbricht. He's the founder of the Silk Road, released him, he from prison sent his own prediction. Many argue that he has been scapegoated.
Yeah, I think I am a big believer in entrepreneurs. They break new ground, they explore new territory, and often our judicial system or our governments or our bureaucrats are quick to use them as scapegoats or blame them or whatever. And look, if he stepped over a line, I think he's done his time. We need entrepreneurs like this. We need extraordinary people who think differently, try different things, and get people working in new ways. And we need them as a part of the world economy. We don't want them locked up. I mean, my gosh, when my dog is put into a cage, I cry. And if you've ever visited a prison, you really feel like, why are we cowing these people? There's got to be a better way to punish people for things that for stepping over the legal lines.
No, entirely.
But 7 years, my gosh. I mean, we want this guy back out there trying to change the world, make the world a better place. I think it's time.
I think it's time, and it brings me to
the right thing to do at the time or not. I mean, let's get him back out here. I'd love to hear what his next mission will be.
If they let him. I mean, as reminding people, he was 26 when he was jailed. It has been 7 years. People arguably would claim that he has paid his dues in that respect. That brings me to, another member of the crypto.
I'd encourage everybody to go visit a prison. I did it with Defy. I'd encourage that of everybody so that they understand really what's going on here and what these people are forced into, and putting people in cages. I don't think it's good for our society. And in America, we put I think it's something like 7 times the average of the world.
Indeed.
People in cages. That doesn't sound like land of the free to me.
Wise words. And we're talking as another member of the crypto industry may soon find himself behind bars. That's Virgil Griffith. I don't know if you heard about him. He's the Ethereum developer who was arrested after giving a lecture on blockchain in North Korea.
Oh, right. We're in an interesting time. This is a very difficult time, I think, because we're recognizing that our old tribal world is changing, and people are trying to adjust to it. They're trying to understand what is this new world going to look like that's global and open and transparent, decentralized? And so I'm noticing governments getting heavier handed in trying to justify their existence as a tribal force. And I think that the winning governments for the next 40 years are going to be the ones who understand that it is a global system now, and that the tribalism is not the way humans are going to operate moving forward. We have now tools that are decentralized, and this is these tools are incredibly valuable, and they are going to make our world much better and much more open and much more flexible and free, and it's happening. But people in power are trying to retain that power rather than looking to the future and saying, hey, when we're global, when the world is open, we're going to have to attract people and businesses and entrepreneurs to our little region of land. And whether that's done in a virtual way, the way the Estonian government has done it, or done in a physical way, it just forces governments to compete for us. And I think you see that in the aggressiveness various governments are using to try to stamp out this freedom that's coming from all sources. And I mean, go forward 20 years and these leaders are all moved out and other leaders are in, and those leaders are going to be much more open to the decentralized world.
Would you say that the government in the United States is stamping out that progress as well?
Yeah, the government of the United States is having trying to do a balancing act. They know that by allowing the freedoms and allowing people to do extraordinary things and allowing those entrepreneurs to act freely, that we all know that we want that technology, we want that innovation. The American government understands that. But they're trying to balance it against these laws that have been put together 80 years ago, and trying to justify, just saying, "Oh, nothing's changed," but things have changed, and we need to realize that. And I think that balancing act is happening right now.
Well, one could argue that the government that is seeing that change, but maybe it's not the right one, is China. Because China in October, President Xi Jinping came out, practically decreed blockchain as part of the society. Something that I don't see the President of the United States doing anytime soon. Do you think that, they are going to move faster than anybody else? What does that mean for blockchain? And not only that, if there's going to be a central bank digital coin, the first one most likely will be a Chinese one, and it's most likely going to happen at the beginning of 2020. How do you see that affecting both the sphere and the world?
Well, the beauty of blockchain is that you can use it in lots of different ways. I'm a little circumspect because President Xi is very controlling, and he wants to control his country. He's keeping
and
currency, and he's trying, and that is that can, and so he's thinking of using blockchain in sort of a controlling way. Although just by stating that he wanted to open up blockchain, it gave him a lot more credibility in the crypto community. And great, then it can be used within government. Government is just one of many industries that can take advantage of decentralization, blockchain, Bitcoin, all of those. And he is he's doing some he is definitely advancing his government. that is one thing he is doing. I'm not sure he's doing the best thing for the people around him. There are a billion great entrepreneurs in China, and I'd like them to be more freed up.
Exactly.
And I think President Trump, I think, should really spend some time thinking, learning about this new decentralized technology, because I think he's going to recognize that it actually does really play into his themes of innovation. I mean, at least the innovation part of his themes.
Because
so I think both. I look around the world and I see, there are a lot of other world leaders who are much more forward thinking than either of them. And it would be great if the largest countries in the world had also recognized the value of this new technology and what it can do for all of us. But they've got huge bank lobbies, and they've got big personal self-interest, and there are a lot of other things that work against it. I'm always looking for a new George Washington or Deng Xiaoping, who are willing to make the personal sacrifice of their own power in order to create the freedoms and openness in a society that allows all those thousand flowers to bloom.
We're very much aching for leaders as such all around the world, but it's not just governments, Mr. Draper. As you mentioned, it's forward thinking for freedoms, and one of the big themes of 2019 was Facebook's Libre's announcement, not launching, but the announcement, and promising to bank the unbanked and do all of that in Africa. Do you still think, that Libre might happen? Would you like it to happen? Do you see something like that happening in 2020?
Yeah, I think all of these innovations should be let to go and grow and make our world better. In general, technology's made our world so much better over the last. Gosh, you go back 100 years, you don't have indoor plumbing. You go back 50 years, there's not much electricity, or no, 50 years, you're not many automobiles out there. And the computing revolution has made all our lives so much easier. With the push of a button, I can get food, I can get a car, I can get a hotel room, I can get it's so wonderful. And all of our lives are so much improved by technology. I think we need to recognize that and encourage these people who are trying to innovate. The idea of putting Mark Zuckerberg, one of the heroes of the world, up on trial, like making it like, this is a horrible thing you're doing, you're innovating. What are they thinking? It's to me, it's terrifying, because I think, where's the world going? What are they thinking that they take one of the pinnacles of the world, this guy who's been heroic, created an enormous business that's helped people communicate throughout the entire world, and they're saying, what you're doing is horrible and whatever. Every technological advancement there are going to be pluses and minuses, but the pluses far outweigh the minuses.
No, that's my question to you.
When the automobile came to fruition, it was not good for the buggy whip manufacturer. It was like buggy whip manufacturer is screaming that there's an automobile that doesn't require a horse and a whip. Well, yeah, but all of our worlds got so much better with the automobile. Same things happening in technology with all of the amazing things that are happening in marketplaces today. And
Mr.
longer
Draper,
term, yeah.
No, I would say I couldn't agree with you more, because at the end of the day, Mark Zuckerberg is one of the most, influential people of the last decade. That show in the Senate and Congress was entirely political. One can argue that every congressman there wanted to hear his own voice, blaming him for for everything in the world. But that said, do you understand, though, that people also are scared of that type of power? And Libre, at the end of the day, would be a very centralized, asset. What have we done then if, the whole idea is giving power back to the people and not another organization that can be, actually considered as a modern day government that owns everything you have, including your personal information?
Well, I mean, Mark Zuckerberg's in a competitive world. It won't be long if Libre comes along. It won't be long before Amazon has their token and Apple has their token. I mean, it's a competitive world. It makes us all improve. And so if there's something that's going wrong, then the customer will change the thinking of one of those groups and start them looking toward a new technology that improves it even beyond there. I've always noticed that the decisions I've made based on fear have always failed me. And the decisions I've made on opportunity have almost always succeeded for me. And I think that, in the media and a lot of other places, they sell fear because it does light up one of the lobes of your brain and make you feel like something's happening to you. And then they can sell you drug ads or whatever else they're selling you on TV. I think we really need to be thinking about what's the opportunity here. Why don't we let this thing go for a while and see how it goes?
Couldn't
I'd
agree.
love to have an easier way for people to move things, and that's why I'm such a Bitcoin proponent. I think sending 2.5% to 4% to the banks every time there's a transaction is ludicrous. You don't have to do that anymore. Use Bitcoin. You don't have to pay the bank every time you swipe your credit card. What are you thinking?
Listen to Tim Draper, people. First of all, I couldn't agree more. But sadly, nowadays we still live in this world that politicians bank on fear. But I hope they listen to you. Finally, I'm so happy that
Actually, the best politicians are looking for the future, looking toward the future. They're not like in petty arguments with each other. They're really looking to the future. It's too bad that the world is focused on the American. It's not just the politicians; it's the bureaucrats too. I do think that they might start thinking about mixing the people up in there instead of having all the Republicans on one side and all the Democrats on the other. I think if it were just alphabetical or seniority or some other way, then they wouldn't be like throwing grenades at each other. Instead, they'd say something, then they kind of look to the person to their left and their right, and if they disapprove, then maybe they'd come to some agreement that was better than what either of them was thinking in the first place.
I think it's a genius idea.
Compromise.
No, that's a genius. I think actually if we alphabetize the Senate instead of just put it party wise, we may have solved it. And I'm saying that completely seriously. Mr. Draper, you're a joy. I want to ask you though, because I'm happy that you're with us today for one specific reason. We got this this pleasure because you reinvested in Goren Holmes Ventures. That's a fintech venture studio focused on incubating and accelerating early blockchain startups. They're now rebranded as Draper Goren Holm, which lucky people that they are. Nothing is more important, needless to say, than accelerating the development of this technology. What do you hope to do with them? What do you hope that they will do in the next, let's say, year or the next 5 years to accelerate this technology?
Well, I feel like I'm the lucky one. I think the two of them are extraordinary. We can expand the Draper Venture Network into Los Angeles. They have a very strong position in blockchain and Bitcoin and smart contracts. They've they've created a conference that I think we can play off of and build on, and encourage more and more of the great technologists that are working on the decentralized world to join. I think that CIS conference that they put on down there is incredibly strong. They've created a very nice accelerator, and I think we can accelerate that. And we're really pleased to have this partnership.
Amen. No, amen to that.
One of the look, they even got me doing jumping jacks.
And I want to ask you.
Which clearly, I'm looking at, I clearly need a few more jumping jacks.
Okay, finally then, because it is the holiday season. It's December 2019. We are about to usher in an entirely new decade. I think it's going to move very fast technologically. But I want to ask you today, we're taping this on a very special day. One can argue the President of the United States has just been impeached. But that said, what do you wish for yourself for this coming year?
It's funny. I don't really think about myself very much. Very nice of you to ask. I'll send you a list. But I'm really more looking out for the world to start. And what's great about it is it's 2020, and that's at least used to be a measure of perfect eyesight.
Sure.
I'm hoping that people start seeing more clearly how important Bitcoin, the blockchain, smart contracts, artificial intelligence are going to be for the world, and how they are no longer, hopefully they will be no longer blinded by their fears. This is really one of the most exciting times in the history of the world. We've never seen technology that can bring the world together in a better way. And I believe that we have it right now. And so I guess my hope for me is pretty much the hope for the rest of the world to see what I see.
To open their eyes. And look, if you send me your Christmas list, I will send you mine. So this, we can do that. Mr. Draper, it has been a pleasure, as always, to have you on our show. Thank you so much. And, as we said, one of the optimistic tones ending this decade, ushering in the next one, Mr. Tim Draper, thank you for being with us.
Great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.